It was supposed to be the happiest day of her daughter's life. The music played, the guests smiled, and Sarah, the proud single mom, watched her beloved Hannah walk down the aisle. But then, Sarah froze. Her face drained of color, her body trembling in shock. And in the next moment, a secret erupted in the middle of the wedding. A truth so devastating it left the bride, the groom, and every single guest in complete disbelief. What was the secret Sarah carried all these years? Why was the wedding suddenly on the edge of disaster? And how did a single confession change everything forever? Stay with us to uncover the shocking truth behind this unforgettable wedding. But before we begin, take a second to follow our channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story that will take your breath away. The sun poured its gentle light over the countryside venue, as though heaven itself had decided to bless the wedding of Hannah Patterson. White roses framed the entrance, golden ribbons shimmered in the breeze, and a subtle scent of jasmine filled the air. It wasn't just a wedding. It felt like destiny unfolding, the kind of moment families remember forever. At the center of it all stood Sarah Patterson, Hannah's beloved mother. Everyone in the town knew her story, the single mom who raised her daughter against all odds, who worked double shifts, who sacrificed comfort and dreams to give Hannah everything she needed. And today, as Hannah glided down the aisle toward her future, Sarah felt her chest swell with a pride so big it almost hurt. She clutched a small bouquet close to her chest, whispering to herself with trembling lips, "That's my girl, my miracle, my everything." The guests turned to watch the bride, admiration in their gazes. Some whispered quietly, unable to contain their awe. "Sarah did all this on her own," one woman murmured. "She never had a husband, never spoke of Hannah's father, but she raised that girl beautifully," another responded. "If that's not a hero, then what is?" added an older man, shaking his head. Sarah tried to ignore the whispers, though she caught pieces of them. They stung, not because they were cruel, but because if people really knew the truth she had buried deep in her heart, they would not call her a hero. But she smiled, tears brimming in her eyes, because no one must ever know. Not today. Today was Hannah's day. Hannah reached the altar, her arm tucked gently into her uncle's, who stepped in long ago to walk her down the aisle. Standing at the end, waiting with a look of devotion, was Daniel Collins, her soon-to-be husband. Daniel's eyes glistened as soon as Hannah's gaze met his. He whispered softly, barely audible, "You're perfect." Hannah's smile could have lit the whole hall. Her silky white gown flowed elegantly as though stitched with every dream she ever carried in her life. For Sarah, the moment was almost unbearable. Her daughter, the little girl she held in her arms through long nights, now stepping into her new life. The minister began the ceremony, his voice warm and steady. "Love is patient, love is kind. It always protects, always trusts, always perseveres. Today, Hannah and Daniel, you choose each other for every tomorrow that comes." For most guests, those were just beautiful words, but for Sarah, they carried a weight. She knew better than anyone that love was not always simple, not always pure. Love for her had been heavy, filled with sacrifice, with impossible decisions that could never be spoken aloud.
She pressed her hands together and inhaled deeply. No one noticed her trembling fingers. When the vows came, Hannah's voice wavered slightly, full of emotion. "Daniel, I am your best friend, my safe place, my dream come true. With you I found the love I always wondered if I'd ever deserve. Today, I choose you for all the days of my life." Daniel held Hannah's hand tighter than ever. A tear ran down his cheek. As he held, "Hannah, you are my heart, my reason, the only one who makes this world make sense. I promise to protect you, to honor you, and to choose you again every single day." The guests applauded softly, some wiping their eyes. Sarah's chest tightened. As she watched Hannah, she wanted to freeze the moment forever. She wanted to hold her child again, the way she did when Hannah was tiny and helpless, and everything in Sarah's world felt like worth. The minister smiled warmly. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." The hall erupted in cheers and thunderous applause. Glasses clinked, violins swelled, and Sarah stood to join the crowd, clapping through tears she could no longer hold back. But even as joy filled the room, something lingered in Sarah's heart. A shadow, a truth, one she had buried for decades. Later, the reception hall glittered with golden light, laughter bouncing off the high ceilings. Hannah twirled with Daniel on the dance floor, while Sarah watched from her table, always smiling, but never quite at peace. Every time someone embraced Hannah, every time a toast was made to the beautiful bride who had overcome life's challenges, Sarah felt the same knot pulling tighter in her chest. If they only knew, she thought. If she ever knew, she would hate me forever. But then Hannah rushed over, glowing with happiness, and threw her arms around Sarah. "Mom, I couldn't have made it here without you. You've been my everything. Today is my dream come true, but it all started with you." Sarah's throat closed up. She wanted to say so much, but only managed, "Oh, my Hannah, all I ever wanted was for you to be safe and loved. That's all." Hannah smiled and kissed her mother's cheek before darting back to the dance floor. Sarah's smile lingered, but as she watched her daughter, she whispered words no one else could hear. "Please forgive me someday for the truth I could never tell you." The music swelled, the party breathed with joy, but in Sarah's heart, a storm was brewing. And storms never stay quiet forever. The reception hall pulsed with energy. Glasses of champagne clinked, silverware tapped, and music filled the golden glow of chandeliers. Guests laughed, children darted between tables, and Hannah's laughter floated through the air like music itself. Sarah sat at the head table, watching it all. Her heart ached with both pride and something heavier, something unnamed. The knot in her chest hadn't unraveled, it had only tightened. She kept smiling, kept nodding politely to guests, but her mind was chasing memories she could never say aloud. And then, the doors opened. Not just opened, slammed. The music faltered as dozens of heads turned. At the grand entrance stood a man and a woman, strangers to most in the room. Their presence was heavy, their expressions unshakable. The man's voice rose, firm, slicing through the air like a blade. "Sarah Patterson, enough lies. It's time she knows the truth." For a moment, the world tilted. Sarah's fork slipped from her hand, hitting her plate with a sharp clang. Her breathing froze. Hannah, mid-laugh on the dance floor, stopped in confused silence, her eyes falling on the strangers storming inward. Whispers rippled among the guests. Who are they? Why are they calling Sarah? What's going on? Sarah pushed her chair back shakily, her face drained of color. She recognized them the moment they appeared. She had always feared this day, dreamed of it in fragments, night after night with terror. Yet deep down she always believed she might outrun it. But they were here. David and Margaret Miller. Hannah glanced between the couple and her mother, her voice small but sharp. "Mom, what is this? Who are they?" The man, David, stepped forward, his eyes locked like iron chains on Sarah. His voice shook with years of grief contained and ready to erupt. "We are David and Margaret Miller, and this," he gestured toward Hannah, "this is our daughter." Gasps exploded through the hall. Guests exchanged stunned looks. Wine glasses froze midair. Hannah's hands trembled as she rose upright, her veil shimmering under the lights. "What?" Hannah whispered, confusion twisting into dread. Her voice cracked louder now. "Mom, what is he talking about?" Sarah's lips quivered. She shook her head, reaching a hand toward Hannah as though she might hold her in place, shield her from the wreckage that now tore open. "Hannah, please, let me explain." But Margaret, her face hollowed by decades of loss, stepped forward. Tears spilled freely as she lifted trembling hands, like she couldn't stop herself from trying to touch her daughter after all these years. "You were taken from us, Hannah, stolen as a baby, and we have looked for you every single day since." The room spun as whispers became frantic. "Stolen? This can't be real. Is this some kind of mistake? Hannah's entire life." Daniel rushed to Hannah's side, grabbing her hand firmly. "Whatever this is, we'll face it together," he whispered to her, though his eyes searched Sarah with cold suspicion. Sarah backed away, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her voice rose high, desperate. "Please, not here, not now. This is her wedding day. Don't destroy her life like this." David's hands clenched into fists. "Her life was destroyed the moment you took her from us." Tears slid down Hannah's cheeks, confusion melting into rage. "Mom, tell me it's not true." The words sliced Sarah's heart open. The room was waiting, the silence sharp, everyone holding their breath for her to speak. She wanted to say no. She wanted to deny it, to protect her little girl, even if it meant holding up an illusion forever. But looking at Hannah, her wide, pleading eyes, Sarah knew there was no running anymore. Her chest collapsed as she whispered, barely audible, "It's true." The hall went silent, like air being sucked out of the room. Hannah stumbled backwards, Daniel catching her by the shoulders. Her voice cracked, torn between disbelief and betrayal. "All my life, everything I believed was a lie?" Margaret broke into sobs, covering her face, while David's jaw hardened, his pain sharp as steel. "We missed her first steps, her first words. We missed everything because of you." Hannah turned on Sarah, voice trembling with fury. "You raised me as your daughter, but I was never yours?" Sarah's tears poured unchecked now. She stepped forward, wanting to hold Hannah, but knowing she couldn't. "Hannah, listen to me, please. I may not be your biological mother, but every kiss, every bedtime story, every sacrifice, it was real. My love was real." Hannah shook her head violently, breaking away, her veil threatening to fall from her hair. "Real love doesn't begin with a lie." Those words cut deeper than Sarah could endure.
The silence in the hall was unbearable, the kind of silence that rings in the ears, heavier than screams. Every face was turned towards Sarah, every breath waiting for the weight of her words. Sarah was still on her knees, the extravagant lighting from the chandeliers pulling shadows across her face. Her hands shook as she gripped the hem of Hannah's gown, as if touching that fabric might anchor her to the only piece of hope still left in her shattered world. Hannah ripped her dress free, her eyes burning. "You owe me the truth. No more lies, no more half-stories. Right here, right now, all of it." David crossed his arms. Margaret clutched her chest. Daniel stood still, torn between protecting Hannah and cursing the woman who had raised her. Sarah swallowed hard, her entire body trembling. She lifted her head and let her tears spill freely, not the discreet tears of a proud mother, but the sobbing collapse of a woman who had spent years shackled to a secret too heavy to bear. Her voice cracked like shattering glass. "The truth is, I was broken long before I ever became your mother." Gasps, murmurs, curtains of disbelief rippled through the wedding hall. Sarah's eyes blurred with tears as she spoke, her words dragging like heavy chains. "When I was young, I had a baby boy. His name was Jacob, my Jacob." Her voice softened, breaking completely for a moment as she tried to say the name. "He was beautiful. He smelled of milk and hope, but he was so frail, too frail. And after just a few days, She covered her face with her shaking hands. "He died in my arms. I screamed until my voice broke. I asked God why he would give me a child only to rip him away." Hannah's mouth parted, her rage tangled with grief as she listened to these words she never knew existed. Sarah's shoulders shook violently. "That moment shattered me. I was 19, alone, and I had just buried everything inside me worth living for. I fell into a darkness so deep, I wasn't even alive anymore. Just breathing, moving, but not alive." Her voice rose with desperation, as if the crowd needed to feel her pain. "Do you know what it's like to dream of crying every night and then wake up to silence? To touch an empty crib, knowing you will never hold your child again?" Tears streamed down Margaret's face. Even David clenched a fist to his lips, fighting conflicting emotions. Sarah inhaled shakily and continued, her confession drowning in guilt. "One day, I saw you, Hannah. A baby, left in a stroller outside a shop for only a moment. You were wrapped in a pink blanket, your cheeks so round, your little fists clenched like you were fighting to exist. I froze. Something inside me whispered, 'This is your second chance. This is Jacob coming back to you.'" More gasps echoed through the room. Eyes widened, wine glasses stood untouched, hands covering their mouths. Sarah pressed her palms together desperately, pleading with no one in particular. Maybe with God, maybe with Hannah. I told myself it wasn't stealing. It was fate. It was destiny, that the universe had handed me a gift so I wouldn't drown in despair. I pushed away the thought of who you belonged to because in that instant I convinced myself you belonged to me. Hannah's face crumpled, as if her very identity had been crushed by invisible hands. Her voice trembled with rage and agony all at once. "So you just took me? Just decided my life was yours?" "Yes," she whispered, her body collapsing again in shame. "And every day after that, I fought to prove I was worthy of you. I worked 3 jobs, I slept on floors, I gave you everything I could.
And through it all, I convinced myself that the love I gave would make up for the crime I committed." Margaret stepped forward now, her words sharp but broken. "But love doesn't erase the pain we lived. Do you know what it's like to wake every morning and run to a crib that's empty? To spend birthdays tied to grief because your daughter isn't there to blow out candles? You lived with her love while we lived with her ghost." David's voice thundered across the hall, vibrating with decades of rage. "You robbed us. You robbed her. You robbed everyone. And now you stand here begging us to believe that theft was love?" Gasps filled the room again as Sarah nearly fainted from the weight of his words. But Sarah lifted her face through tears, locking her swollen eyes onto Hannah. "Hannah, he's right. They're right. It was wrong, Hannah. Sinful. Evil. Call it whatever you want. I don't deny it. But listen to me. Every moment after that, every sickness you had, every fear, every tear, I was there. My arms were your safe place. My sacrifices were real. The lie was how you came to me. The love I gave, that was never a lie." Hannah's breathing quickened. Her vision spun between Sarah on the floor and Margaret standing with shaking hands outstretched. Margaret whispered, tears rolling down, "We wanted nothing more than to see you grow, to watch you live every moment we dreamed of for you. And while she was holding you, we were dying." Hannah passed her hands over her ears as if the truth itself was too loud. "Stop it! Stop all of it! I don't even know who I am anymore!" Daniel moved closer, but this time Hannah shoved him away again, unspeakable turmoil flooding her soul. Sarah knew she had nothing left but her soul to bear. With a strength fueled by regret, she crawled to Hannah's feet, hands clasped together as if in prayer. "Hannah, I can't give you back the years you lost with them. I can't erase the crime I committed. I will pay the price, jail, exile, their wrath, even yours. But you must hear me now. If you hate me, I understand. But please don't question whether I loved you. You were the only reason I survived my own life." The words fell into silence, heavy and raw. Sarah didn't lift her head. Guests wept quietly in the corners. Some seemed ready to call the authorities. Others were weeping openly for the tragedy unfolding before their very eyes. And in the center of it all stood Hannah Patterson, no longer the radiant bride, but a young woman whose entire identity had been ripped apart within the span of minutes. The truth was out, and it was devastating. But redemption or destruction was still ahead.
Hannah's body stiffened like stone, though her heart raced as if it wanted to shatter her ribs and escape. Her hands trembled at her sides. She didn't even realize she was still clutching the crushed petals of her bridal bouquet. Her entire life, every bedtime story, every sacrifice she thought was proof of unconditional love, was now tangled with the crime so unspeakable she could barely breathe. And the woman she called Mom still sat weeping at her knees. Hannah's voice erupted, sharp and broken, slicing through the thick silence. "You lied to me every single day of my life." Sarah sobbed harder, clutching her chest as though her heart itself were ripping apart. "Hannah, please, don't touch me," Hannah screamed, stepping back as if Sarah's touch would burn her. "My whole life, you looked me in the eye and told me I was your daughter. You made me believe I was your miracle, but I was never yours, was I?" Sarah's head dropped. "You were my daughter in every way that love could make true, but not in blood, not in truth." Hannah's words spat like fire, her eyes drenched in tears. Daniel tried to place a steadying hand on her arm. "Hannah, maybe—" "No," she snapped, shoving him away again. Her voice wavered and her whole body shook under the weight of betrayal. The guests murmured,
some wiping tears, others whispering loudly about calling the police. The once joyful reception hall now felt haunted, like the walls themselves were weeping. Hannah whirled toward the Millers, her biological parents, her voice trembling. "And you say you've been looking for me. I don't even know you. I don't know your touch, your voice, your love." Her tears burned down her cheeks. "Do you expect me to just run into your arms like all of this never happened?" Margaret's hands flew to her mouth, sobs breaking her chest. David's jaw tightened in silence, though his eyes glistened with the agony of recognition. Their lost child was standing right there, yet she was a stranger. Hannah turned back to Sarah, her voice dropping to a shaking whisper that cut sharper than any scream. "You killed me, Mom. You didn't bury my body, you buried my identity. Who am I? Am I Hannah Patterson, or am I someone else's daughter entirely?" Sarah crawled forward on her knees, desperate, pleading. "You are Hannah, my baby. I know what I did was unforgivable, but please, believe in the years I gave, the love I gave. It wasn't fake. I swear, it wasn't fake." Hannah shook her head, clutching her veil with trembling fingers until it tore from her hair. "Real love doesn't begin with kidnapping." The words silenced even Sarah's sobs. A scream tore out of Hannah's throat, primal and raw. "I hate you! I hate you!" The hall erupted in gasps. Sarah froze as though struck by lightning. Those words, sharper than any blade, pierced straight through her. She collapsed fully to the floor, curling inward, her sobs echoing through the hall like the tragic music of a broken soul. Hannah staggered, covering her face, sobbing uncontrollably now, her dress pooling around her like fallen dreams. "You took everything from me," she whispered into her hands. "My real family, my real childhood, my truth. And now, I don't even know if I can believe in anything anymore." Margaret stepped forward, tears soaking her face. Her voice was soft, maternal, almost begging. "Sweetheart, you don't have to choose tonight. You don't even have to forgive. Just know we never stopped searching. We never stopped loving you. You were never forgotten." Hannah's breathing hitched, torn between the anguish of betrayal and the pull of unfamiliar love that sounded so painfully genuine. She turned once more to Sarah, her voice strangled. "Do you know what you've done to me? You split me in half. I can't even tell where the lie ends and love begins." Sarah reached out a shaken hand from her knees, unable to rise, her voice so small it barely carried across the hall. "Then let me bear your pain. Hate me, despise me, punish me. But please, Hannah, don't let my sins take your life from you. Don't let what I did destroy who you are." The guests couldn't barely contain themselves. Some sobbed openly, others shook their heads in disbelief, some whispered prayers under their breath. Hannah stood in the center of it all, her white wedding gown gleaming in the golden light, but now the image wasn't of purity or love. It was of a young woman torn between two worlds, drowning in grief, shattering under betrayal. And for the first time, the strongest bond she had ever known, the one with Sarah, felt like chains wrapped in barbed wire, cutting into her skin with every breath. The daughter's pain was now out in the open. It was raw. It was unbearable. And it was only the beginning of the storm that would decide everyone's future.
The hall was drowning in silence. Hannah stood trembling in her torn veil and soaked gown, the words "I hate you" still echoing in every ear. Sarah remained on the floor, broken, almost lifeless. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some unable to stop weeping, others simply staring in disbelief, paralyzed by the storm unfolding before them. And then Sarah lifted her head. Her face was streaked with tears, her body weak, but her eyes carried something different now. Not denial, not desperate excuses, a quiet acceptance. She pulled herself up onto her knees and turned toward the Millers, her voice steady despite the shaking. "David,
Margaret, you were robbed of everything that was rightfully yours. Because of me, you missed first walks, first words, birthdays, graduations. Because of me, you lived with grief while I lived inside a lie so big even I almost believed it. Her voice cracked, but she pressed forward. I cannot undo what I did, and I will not stand here and beg for your kindness. If you want the police, call them. If you want me gone, I'll go. If punishment is what I deserve, I will take it, every second of it. She bowed her head low, tears dripping to the floor. Because the truth is, I don't deserve forgiveness. Gasps coursed across the crowd. Sarah pressed her shaky palms against the floor, her forehead nearly touching it, her voice trembling but resolute now. I can't ask Hannah to love me anymore. I can't demand a title I stole. But let God, let this room, let all of you know, every ounce of my love for her was real, even if I burn for it, even if she never calls me mom again. The crime was mine, but my love was true. Her words melted through the air. Guests dabbed their eyes. For the first time, David's strong jaw wavered. Margaret clutched her chest so tightly she could barely breathe. Hannah stared at Sarah, her hands trembling as though she were holding shards of glass. "Why are you saying this now?" she asked, her voice breaking, aching. Sarah lifted her eyes, broken but firm. "Because I need you to know the truth and to be free from it. I cannot give you your past, Hannah, but I can give you the truth, and I can give you back to them. I can let go now." Her lips trembled again as she looked at Margaret with hollow sincerity. "Margaret, you are her mother. You carried her, birthed her, prayed for her. I stole her years, but not her soul. She's still yours." Margaret sobbed uncontrollably, unable to hold herself upright. David pulled her close, his chest trembling too. Sarah turned back to Hannah. Her words, quiet but crystal clear, pierced the silence. "Hate me if you must, forget me if you must, but do not let my sin define who you are. You are strong, you are loved, and your life is still yours to live. I will not chain you to my mistake any longer." And then, in a voice so soft it was almost swallowed by her sobs, she whispered, "I would rather lose you in truth than keep you in lies." The crowd froze. The entire hall was wrapped in the surreal intensity of this confession. For the first time, Hannah's face softened. The anger was still there, the heartbreak still raw, but the image before her wasn't a villain clutching stolen treasure. It was of a broken, penitent woman who had loved her fiercely, just in the wrong, unforgivable way. Daniel squeezed Hannah's hand gently this time, and she didn't pull away. Her breathing was heavy as she whispered to him, almost to herself, "She's letting me go." And Daniel quietly only said, "Sometimes letting go is the deepest kind of love." Sarah lowered her head again, tears dripping, her body slumped forward as though her strength was gone. But this time, she wasn't hiding her shame, she was offering it. And in doing so, for the first time that night, the room felt a tremor of something different. Not relief, not joy, but the faintest pulse of redemption. A broken woman had stopped clinging to her lies and finally surrendered to truth.
The room was frozen in silence after Sarah's surrender. Hannah stood at the center, her white gown glowing beneath the chandeliers, though nothing about her felt pure or joyful anymore. Her face was streaked with ruined makeup, her body trembling after hours that felt like a lifetime. Her wedding, her perfect day, was now a battlefield of truth and shattered bonds. On one side stood David and Margaret Miller, her real parents, faces weeping with decades of grief now cracked open by hope. On the other side knelt Sarah Patterson, the woman who wasn't her mother, but who had been her only mom in every lived memory. And in Hannah's chest, two hearts warred. She turned her eyes on Sarah, voice trembling like breaking glass. "You lied to me. You stole me. You destroyed the life I was meant to have." Sarah sobbed silently, her head bowed, unable to meet Hannah's eyes. Hannah's voice rose, stronger, sharper. I should despise you. I should curse your name. I should walk away right now and never look back. Every guest sat on the edge, holding their breath. Hannah's next words came softer, torn between hate and heartbreak. But how do I erase the only arms that ever held me when I was sick? The only hands that worked to feed me, clothe me, send me to school? The only lullabies I ever heard came from you. Gasps. Some guests covered their mouths. Margaret sobbed harder, clutching David's arm for strength. Sarah finally looked up, her swollen red eyes shining desperately at Hannah. Hannah took a shaky breath and looked toward David and Margaret. And you, I don't even know you, but I see myself in your faces. I hear truth in your voices. And somewhere in my blood, my soul knows you loved me long before I could ever know it. Margaret reached out, whispering faintly. We never stopped, Hannah, not for a single day. David's eyes glistened, his strong facade breaking. We prayed for you every night. You've lived in our hearts even when we lived in agony. Hannah covered her face, crying harder. So which family do I belong to? Which life is mine? The one built on lies, or the one I never knew? Sarah whispered hoarsely from her knees. Both, Hannah. Don't let my sin erase them, or erase me. You are not the sum of my crime. You are more. For the first time in hours, Sarah's words didn't sound like desperate excuses. They sounded like truth. Hannah stepped back, her dress swishing across the polished floor, breathing ragged. I am broken in half. Half of me hates you, Sarah, and half of me still loves you, because love doesn't die just because the truth hurts. Sarah sobbed again, whispering, that's all I could ever hope for, that some fragment of love would survive. The whole room felt the weight of Hannah's agony. Her gaze swung toward her biological parents once more. And you, David, Margaret, I don't want to lose you again, but I don't know how to be your daughter. I don't know how to erase decades of absence. I don't know how to just start over. Margaret's voice shook gently. Then don't erase anything, Hannah. We'll walk with you, step by step, not as strangers, not demanding anything, but as parents still willing to wait, even now. David nodded, broken. We've lived in emptiness for 20 years. We can live in patience, too, if it takes you time. Hannah dropped her bouquet completely, her arms falling limply to her sides. And then her choice came. Not against one family, not in favor of another, but for herself. Her voice grew steady, though tears still flowed. I can't erase what you did, Sarah, and I can't forget the pain you caused them, but I also can't deny the love that shaped me into who I am today. You will never stop being a part of me. Sarah broke into sobs, shaking violently as though those words were her last breath of air. Hannah turned, her gaze softening toward David and Margaret. And you, David, Margaret, I want to know you. I want to learn everything I missed. I want to hear your stories, your memories, your voices calling me by the name you gave me. I don't know how it will work, but I want to try. I want both families in my life. Margaret cried out in rushing forward to hug Hannah tightly. David's stern demeanor finally shattered, his tears running freely as he held them both. The entire hall erupted in applause and tears, not from joy alone, but from witnessing the impossible. A broken family story, trembling on the edge of healing. Still, Hannah turned one last time to Sarah. Tears blurred her view, her heart torn but whole enough to speak words of grace. You are not forgiven yet. Maybe one day, but I will not erase you. The love was real, even if the beginning of it was wrong. Maybe my journey isn't about hating you. Maybe it's about healing from you. Sarah buried her face in her hands, sobbing harder than ever, but this time the sobs carried not just guilt, but relief. Hannah, the daughter she stole, the daughter she raised, wasn't erasing her. And somewhere inside, redemption had truly begun.
The reception hall smelled of wilted roses and spilled champagne. The violin stood silent in the corner. What began as a wedding had turned into a confessional, a courtroom, and finally a place of truth. Hannah held on to Margaret and David, their tears mingling with her own. At the same time, Sarah sat collapsed on the floor, exhausted, her body trembling from hours of sobs, but now her cries were quieter. For the first time, there was no shouting, no accusing, just silence. A silence that felt tender, fragile. Hannah turned once more, her eyes swollen and red but steady. From this day on, I will live in truth. No more lies, no more masks. I am Hannah Miller by birth. I am Hannah Patterson by memory. But above all, I am Hannah, and no one will define me but me. The words spread through the room like light breaking through shattered glass. Margaret pressed both hands to her daughter's face, whispering, "You will always be ours." David, his voice shaking, added, "And we will walk with you patiently, however long it takes. We don't need the years back, we just need the tomorrow." Hannah nodded, tears flooding again, but this time they weren't only tears of grief, they were also of release. Then her eyes landed on Sarah again. Sarah's head was lowered, too ashamed to look, certain she would be told to leave, cast out forever. But Hannah's voice carried softly across the hall. "Stand up, Sarah." Sarah hesitated, too broken to move. Daniel gently helped her rise, his face caught somewhere between anger and empathy. When Sarah finally stood before Hannah, she couldn't meet her gaze. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I don't belong at your side anymore." Hannah's voice wavered but held strength. "You don't belong as my mother in the way I once believed, but you are part of me, and I cannot erase you the same way you could not let go of me. Someday, when I'm stronger, perhaps forgiveness will come. Until then, you are not erased." Sarah broke down, sobbing with a strange mixture of grief and relief. For her, this was redemption, not clean, not easy, not instant, but redemption that begins with a choice to still exist in her daughter's life, even in fragments. The guests clapped softly through their tears. Some leaned into each other, whispering, "Miracle." Others brushing away mascara and smudged eyeliner. What had been a wreck turned unexpectedly into a testimony of human resilience. Hannah stood, holding one hand of Margaret's while reaching her other hand toward Sarah. Slowly, uncertainly, both women touched her. Not as rivals, not as enemies, just broken threads of a daughter's story finally stitched together under the same roof. It wasn't the wedding anyone expected, but it was real, and real is sometimes stronger than perfect. The minister, who had long been silent in the corner, finally spoke up, his voice gentle, almost trembling with emotion. Weddings are not only about love between two people. They are about truth, courage, and family in every complex, imperfect way that word exists. Today, truth was spoken. Hearts were broken, but love survived. His words became the closing seal on a night that would never be forgotten. Sometimes, our lives are built on secrets too painful to speak. Sometimes the truth destroys everything we thought we knew. But even in the rubble, there can be rebuilding. Even in the ashes, there can be light. Hannah learned that family is not defined by perfection or biology alone, but by the courage to face pain and still choose love. And Sarah, she learned something even harder. Redemption does not erase the past, but it gives the chance to build a better tomorrow. This was not a fairy tale wedding. This was something deeper, a story of loss, truth, and the quiet miracle of forgiveness just beginning to bloom. Because in the end, love, in all its broken and imperfect forms, still has the power to heal. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of truth, love, and redemption, then stay with us. There are many stories like Hannah's still waiting to be told. Stories that remind us how fragile we are, but also how strong we can become. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next emotional journey. Because sometimes one story can change the way we see everything.